Hello again, welcome back to Illegally Cited. This is BGFH, and I am back to give you my impressions and kind of a little demo of iOS 9. And it's been out for a couple of weeks now, and actually Apple has already released 9.0.1, which has a few bug fixes already. That came out about a week after iOS itself came out. So there is that. iOS 9, I've actually been playing with it for a while now because I've been playing with the the public beta, and a little bit of the developer beta, and things like that as well. I'm using my iPad Air here because while I won't be able to show you all of some of the stuff that iOS 9 can do, I can at least show you one or two things that are specific to the iPad, and talk about that. So the nice thing is too, with Reflector 2 and the way things are working better now, you notice if I touch something on my screen,
Dock settings, double tap to open.
VoiceOver is coming directly through the computer audio. I'm able to channel it directly through the audio, so it doesn't quite sound so amateur or ghetto, just not directly through the microphone. So, yeah, iOS 9. On the surface, it's like I kind of struggled to figure out what I wanted to do for this video, because I don't want to do like, oh, this is every feature that iOS 9 does. I mean, there are a gazillion of other sites that do it well for the mainstream stuff. And I think AppleViz, www.appleviz.com, by the way, if you haven't checked those guys out, they have a lot of articles and a lot of content on accessibility features, specifically as it relates to low vision and blindness and deaf blindness and things like that. So, they do a more thorough kind of thing. This is just kind of my personal thoughts on iOS, and I will go through some of it with you. So one of the first things that you have, notice I'm on the home screen right now.
News. Double tap to open.
Spotlight.
Search.
Flick
Search
over
field.
to the left,
Double tap
to the
edit.
left of all my home screens, I get this new kind of search feature. Remember in earlier versions of iOS where you had like the Spotlight search over on the left, how they used to do it? Now what it does is it actually searches, they kind of call this Siri proactive kind of a thing. So it splits it up into a few different sections. Now, on the top,
button.
Here's the problem. What I've determined is this top row, it has a list of contacts that you frequently visit. Like in iOS 8, they put those in the app switcher, and they put those above the apps. They've taken them out of there, and they've now put them into here. Now, what I've noticed is, having done a little bit of experimentation, what I've found is that on the iPhone, those buttons usually read. On the iPad, however, it treats them all as one unlabeled button. So maybe if I'm lucky, on a rare occasion, it might actually read them. But most of the time, it generally doesn't, which I have contacted Apple about that to let them know. Below that,
Pac-Man 256 application.
it gives me
button.
a list of
Double tap
apps
to
that
open.
it thinks that I might like to do because, you know what, maybe you've played these for a while and you want to use them. Pac-Man 256, great choice.
Settings application button. Horizon Chase application button.
That's
Double
a
tap to
game that
open.
I'm going to cover on the channel here shortly if I can. That is a great app, really fun racing game.
Keyboard viewer application button. Double tap to
And
open.
I don't know why I'm getting a little bit of weird feedback there, but that's what that kind of weird background noise is.
Pages application button.
So I get a row
Double
of
tap to open.
apps. And sometimes they might be apps that are not on your device. If you're using, let's say, you're doing some kind of a task all the time and it's like, oh, well, maybe there's this other app that can help you with this. And sometimes I've seen, for things that I don't actually own. So they do have that on occasion.
Dinner nearby button.
Below that,
Double tap
they
to
have
open.
kind of a nearby section. So if I want dinner nearby, it kind of takes into context the time of day and what you're doing.
Bars nearby. Button.
Bars nearby.
Double tap to open.
I gotta work tomorrow, so nah.
Shopping nearby.
Shopping.
Button. Gas nearby. Button. Banks and ATMs nearby. Button. Desserts nearby. Button. News. Heading.
And some news. So then there's some news articles, and it just kind of pulls in, I am guessing, from what you have on your news app, which I'll also cover here, probably one of the next things. So it gives us a couple of articles here.
Hope to celebrate Mass on final day in U.S. Organizers say 1 million people are expected.
Yada yada. What else do we got?
Hope to celebrate Mass. Donald Trump is free to cherry-pick his polls, but his decline is clear. In fact, Iraq signs collaboration deal with Russia, Iran, Syria. Button. Button. Button.
I'm not sure what that last button is. Now, what I've also noticed with the news is this whole screen seems a little finicky as far as voiceover is concerned, because as a low vision user, I can see where things are typically, but I just can't read them, so I do a lot of explore by touch. If you flick, it generally seems to work okay, but if I just take my finger and usually try to touch something,
Iraq signs collaboration deal with Russia.
like here it's okay, but if I three-finger flick
Rose 1
up,
to 5 of 7.
now I don't have all of my news visible on the screen. I can't.
Donald Trump is free to cherry-pick his
Sometimes
polls.
it'll read and sometimes it won't. Sometimes I actually have to flick left and then flick right again for it to kind of behave. I've noticed that in a couple of different areas of iOS, but this being one of the main ones. So let's go back to our home screen.
FaceTime. Double tap to open.
And let's go.
News. Double
This
tap to
is
open.
the new news app that is available on iOS 9. Let's go open it up. Now I'm curious if it's actually
News
going to
for you,
pull
heading.
in from my phone. When I was doing the original the beta, I played with news just enough to know that it worked. And then I stopped because what I noticed is that when I went from my phone to my iPad, or if I went from one device to another that had, I didn't actually have it on my phone actually, but I had it on a couple of iPads that we had laying around. And they didn't sync up. So every time I would go in, it was like, oh, okay, well, you want to set up what news you like. And it was just kind of a thing of, well, no, if you're not going to sync that, I'm just going to wait until the full thing out, and then hopefully it just does it through iCloud or however it does it. So you get a nice little layout here.
Unread. Google bringing high-speed Wi-Fi to 100 Indian rail stations by the end of 2016. Hotspots
Okay.
will serve 10 million. Unread. PlayStation Vita successor unlikely, says Sony. Sony won't likely be releasing a PlayStation Vita successor anytime soon, as SCE Worldwide
Yeah, I
Studios
highly
president
doubt
Shuhei
that,
Yoshida
too.
doesn't believe they're unread. Aaron Sorkin apologizes to Tim Cook for harsh comments, says both of them went a little too far this weekend. Unread. 3 years of add-on support plan.
And
for
I'm
Lego
just
Dimensions.
touching these
Lego
directly,
Dimensions.
but again,
It's
if I
launched
were to
today for
flick
PlayStation
left-
3. Unread. Aaron Sorkin apologizes to Tim Cook for
Flick
harsh
left
comments.
again.
Unread. PlayStation Vita successor unlikely,
Flick left
says
again.
Sony. Unread. Google bringing high-speed
So yeah,
Wi-Fi to
these are all
100
the
Indian rail
articles that I
stations by
touched
the end
on
of 2000.
before.
Unread.
Flick right.
PlayStation Unread. Unread. 3 years of add-on support. Unread. Fallout Anthology. Might and Magic Heroes VII. NBA 2K16. Unread. Silent Hills had another awesome creative talent. Horror manga master Junji Ito.
So you notice a lot of this is gaming related because I follow, again, a lot of the things, if you watched my RSS reader video, my Lyre or Lyre, whatever, my RSS reader
Page
video.
1 of 10. Page 1 of 10.
I follow a lot of that stuff. So let's click on the Sony one.
Unread. PlayStation Vita successor unlikely, says Sony.
So I'll double tap on that.
IGN. Heading.
And so this kind of works as like an RSS reader, except what they do is, I guess they have Apple has their own API that news sites can kind of plug into, and they're going to be partnering with like where you get with on a website now with the ad blocker, or if you go to like a RSS reader that pulls the article out without the ads. I guess they're going to have their own API where they can kind of have the targeted ads. So it might not be as invasive, but it'll be a way for websites to make money with ads or something through Apple's ad revenue. I don't really understand how it works, but let's just...
Sony won't likely be releasing a PlayStation Vita successor anytime soon, as SCE Worldwide Studios president Shuhei Yoshida doesn't
So
believe
let's
their
do our
page 202.
three-finger flick. Yeah, this is just a little short article here. But again, really nice. It's almost like when you go to Safari and you say, I want to look at an article in reading view. The news app is actually not bad. I actually rather like it. So on the bottom, I actually have tabs.
Collected. For you. Tab. 1 of 5.
For you.
Favorite. Explore. Tab. Favorites. Tab. 2
Favorites.
of 5.
Self-explanatory.
Explore. Tab. 3 of 5.
Explore.
Search. Tab. 4 of
Search.
5. Saved. Tab. 5
Saved.
of 5.
If I want to save an article.
Search. Tab. Explore. Tab.
Let's go to
3 of 5.
Explore.
Explore. Heading.
This is where like you can add basically, when you open up this app for the first time, it gives you like a couple of news services, and it says, "Hey, check one or two of these to, to start with." And then as you double tap on them with VoiceOver, just doing your standard double tap, it highlights them and it'll say selected or not selected or whatever. But as you select more, it gives you more news style, like news categories or specific websites that are in that category to follow. So as you keep kind of scrolling down, it keeps kind of adding more depending on what categories you've added. So it's actually kind of not bad.
The Guardian button. Just Jared button. Pixel Dynamo button. Comic book resources button. People button.
So I'm just kind of
double tap to
cruising
use
this road
business
here.
button. Business button. Suggested topics. Heading.
Suggested
Business
topics.
button.
Business.
Digital media button. Video games button. Entertainment button. Software button.
All right.
Double tap to
yeah,
view stories.
so you
Page
get the
202.
idea. And then down here you have a whole bunch of
Politics button.
categories, just like in that RSS reader. Again, if you want to browse a certain, look at a news category, you can do that and then narrow it down and go, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't know they had this page had a news feed or whatever. So again, it's pretty self-explanatory. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in here. It does work very well with VoiceOver. I do like it quite a bit. And I could see myself using a combination of this and an RSS reader. It really depends, I think, for me, how Apple does their ads. Like if stuff does start getting a little bit ad heavy, maybe I will stick to an RSS reader. And if somebody doesn't want to, spend a couple dollars on an RSS reader, it's just giving you another nice option out of the box. Because if you have an Apple device, it is a free app under iOS 9, and it will be downloaded for you, or you already have it on the device. So it's just another nice included feature. Now, because I don't really remember where I put it,
News.
I'm going to do I'm just going to do a search here. Uh-oh.
Delete. B.
Okay.
N.
My VoiceOver was wigging out. Oh, wait, I don't want
P.
news.
Delete. E. N.
Oh, I was talking about news, so I was
Delete.
thinking about it. Okay.
N.
N.
O. T. E. Notes.
Let's
Productivity.
pop in
button.
notes. Okay,
Selected.
that's where I thought
Notes.
I put it.
Productivity.
So what's cool about this...
Notes. Capture maps. Photos. Great new tools for note sync to your iCloud account. Capture maps. Sketch your thoughts. Draw you. Easily locate added photos. Draw you.
Oops. So I haven't opened this
Draw
on my
using just your
iPad
finger.
yet.
Find your stuff. Easily locate added photos, maps, and start enjoying these features today. Continue button.
Okay.
Alert. Turn on iCloud.
Yeah.
Not now, but go to settings button. To access your notes from all your devices, turn on iCloud for notes. Go to settings button.
Fine.
Go to settings.
I'll go to settings, and that way I can show you.
Settings.
All right. Well, you know what? We're not going to change that right now because it would take a while. But let's go back to notes.
Notes. Back button.
If I had one set up here, what I do want to draw your attention to, I've only played with this a little bit previously,
Back button.
but I have a back button.
Delete note. Dimmed. But share note. New note button.
I can do a new
Double
note.
tap to compose. Note. New note button.
And
Double tap to compose a new attachment browser button.
I have an attachment browser now, so now you can embed photos and media files into a note.
No notes.
No notes. And I probably have to create a note here first.
Photos. Dimmed. Sketch. Dimmed button.
I can do a
Double tap
sketch.
to add
Now
a
that's
sketch
the
to the
one
current note.
thing, they mentioned on that little splash screen about how you can sketch or draw in your own notes, which if you're a visual person, that's great. But, if you have somebody that sends you a note and they like to doodle or they like to do handwriting, again, that's going to be something that could potentially, knock a note's accessibility. So let's do a new note
button.
really quickly.
Double tap to compose a new note. Text field is editing.
So
Character
I've
mode.
got a
Insertion
note
point at
here.
start.
And
Edit button. Switch to full screen mode button.
let's see.
Delete note button. Double tap to delete the current note.
Okay. Yeah, it's just being really stupid here. Come
Add
on.
image. Add sketch. 6:06 p.m. Add image button. Prediction. Actions available. B. Predict cap. Text styles. Checklist off. Text operations button.
So on the top of the keyboard, what's really nice, you have your prediction as usual. But in the left-hand side, you also have a couple of new things. I can make, as a note, I can make a simple checklist. So
Checklist off button.
Let's say checklist on.
Checklist on.
And so then you start doing, so let's just say I'm doing a shopping list or something.
Tab M. L
Milk.
K. Return. Milk. Checklist button. Incomplete.
All right, so let's say bread.
Cap B. R.
Ah.
Delete. R. Checklist button. E. A. S. D.
There we go. Bread.
Return.
Boom.
Need. Checklist button. Incomplete.
Now when I go back up to the body of the message, or the note.
List item checklist. Incomplete. Note. Bread. System font regular. 17. Insertion point at start of line bread.
If I was actually out of the note, not editing, when I view the note, I can check and uncheck these. So it's a really nice way. I can make checklists now, grocery lists, whatever. And you can also even do a basic folder level. Now, I can't do nested folders, but I can do at least one folder deep. So again, if somebody is just kind of getting by with the built-in apps, Notes does provide a little bit more functionality in its basic form, you know, so you have a little bit more control. You can embed pictures, you can make lists, you can, you know, do little sketches or drawings or whatever. So there is a little bit more to them. You can organize them a little, and that was the one thing about Notes that I really didn't like in the old Notes app, is that I'm a firm believer in organizing things structurally. So, you know, files, folders, like everything has to be in its own place, you know. I don't want to just have one huge long list of items and then have to try to sift through them to figure out what the heck I'm looking for. So it's at least, I'm at least glad that they added that. Now, talking about another one of iOS 9's features, this is something, now there are two layers of multitasking. Actually, there are kind of three. There is kind of the overlay mode, and then there is the full multitasking mode, where I can't do the full multitasking because I'm running an iPad Air. If you have an iPad Air 2 or newer, you will be able to do full multitasking where you can put two apps side by side. But I can do the basic form of multitasking. So I'm in Notes right now. If I go up to the
6:09 p.m. status bar
let's
item.
go up to my status
Swipe down
bar.
with 3 fingers to reveal the
Now,
notification center.
instead,
Swipe up with 3 fingers to reveal the control center. Double tap to scroll to top. Swipe
Now-
left with 3 fingers to reveal the side app switcher.
aha, see, so it says now, swipe left with 3
6:10 p.m.
fingers.
status bar item. Notes, news, active.
And voila, now I have kind of, now it's not going to be a full app, but it's kind of like a little peeking, kind of a cheat sheet sort of thing. So it's like I'm doing something with my main app, but I want to check into something. So it has just a couple of different things here that I can choose.
Mail, 3 unread emails, active.
So if I wanted to check, let's say, something from my email and then put it into my notes, I could do that. Safari.
News, active.
So let's say, let's just open news.
News, active. News, explore, heading.
And there's the news where I was before. Yeah, I was on the page where we discover. I have my tabs over there.
For you, tab, 1 of 5.
Let's go to
For
that
you,
little thing
heading,
over
check it,
there.
checking for
So
new story,
now,
for you,
let's say
heading.
there's something, and let's say that I had a chat application, or maybe I don't know if I don't know if I have Twitter set up on this iPad or not. But theoretically, if it supported Twitter, or if maybe maybe it's not supported yet, but third parties will be able to make use of that. I could maybe just have my little list of tweets on my right-hand side as I'm doing some other stuff. Now, the only thing I haven't figured out really is how to get rid of it. If I
Dismiss news.
So yeah, if I go over to the left where my body is,
Dismiss.
now
Notes,
it
back
dismisses it. I was hoping that I could kind of keep it nested there, but it is more of, like I said, it's a temporary peak kind of thing where I'm only going to do it temporarily and then I'm going to go back to whatever I'm doing. So if I had the iPad Air 2 or newer, I would be able to do an actual full multitasking with like two apps side by side. So that's kind of a bummer that I don't have that, but whatever. Moving on to another iOS 9 feature, let's go to our task switcher.
App switcher.
You notice this has changed too.
Swipe up with 3 fingers to close the app.
No longer do you have the list of recent contacts. That's not there anymore. And what kind of threw me off guard for a little while is they changed they reverse ordered the apps. So like before, you'd have the home screen on the left and then any of your apps were kind of going to the right. Now your home screen is on the right and then your recent kind of apps as you've used them go back into the to the left. So
notes active.
There's my notes.
Swipe
if
up
I
with 3 fingers
left,
to close the app. News active.
News.
Swipe up with
So
3
let's
fingers
say
to close the
that.
closing news. Settings active.
It works the same
Swipe up
way
with
as
3
it did
fingers to
before.
close the app. Actions available.
Just the fact that your stuff is the top part where the contacts are missing, and then the whole reverse order. Like I said, I still instinctively want to go the other way. I haven't quite gotten the hang of just like, no, you have to flick left now. But yeah, so there is that.
Notes active. Swipe up with 3
Let's close
closing
notes
notes.
too. We don't
Safari.
care about that anymore either. So that's a little bit of the task switcher.
FaceTime. Double tap to open.
Now, let's go into the settings app. There are a few
settings.
voiceover, there are a few accessibility features that they have added. They did add under, I don't have a braille display here to hook up, but they did add a delay setting that you could add for the tutor messages. So like, when it says double tap to open or some kind of a side message, kind of a tutorial message with voiceover. Before, it would either be, for some people, it would be way too fast or it would be way too slow. So now you have more control over, it's like, okay, how long do you want that little tip message to appear before it goes back to, whatever item you're landed on with voiceover before the tip. So one really cool feature with the
S.E. Anderson, Jishan 1, set up family sharing, but storage, 192 GB available, but Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, burn
Let's
2,
go
button,
to the very
Rose 1 to
top
13 of
left.
66, settings, search field.
I
Double
have a
tap to
search
edit.
field. I can
Search field,
search.
editing, character mode, settings, insertion
So
point
if
of
there's
star.
that one setting that I can't, like, I know what the setting is called or I know what it is, but I can't for the life of me remember where the heck it is, I can search my settings now. So that's actually really handy because there's been quite a few times where I've been trying to search for something and it's not having it. Like I cannot find it. So that is a very welcome addition because some of the stuff is buried in there pretty deeply. So that's a really nice thing. They have a search there.
Settings, heading,
Let's go...
storage, 192 GB, general, button.
Let's go
Settings,
to general.
heading, use up, accessibility, button.
Accessibility.
Settings, heading,
Let's go to
voiceover,
voiceover.
on, button. Settings, heading,
And I'm just going to flick through these. I don't really think there's much in the way of new stuff for voiceover.
voiceover practice, button. Speaking rate, heading, speaking rate, 40%.
So a lot of this, I'm not going to explain
Swipe up or
this.
down
If you
with
want
one
to go
finger to
back
adjust.
and look at one of my other earlier videos, I explained some of these before. But we're just going to flick through and see what we have.
Speak hints, on. Use pitch change, on. Use sound effects, on. Speech, button. Braille, button. Rotor, button. Typing style, touch typing, button. Phonetic feedback, character and typing feedback, button. Modifier keys, control plus option, button.
This is one feature that's really nice. So one of the things that a lot of people didn't like, myself included, both on the Mac and if you're using a keyboard with an iOS device, is that you had to kind of hold so many keys down. Like if you're doing a voiceover command, you always had to do command option. And then whatever key it is. So if you had something where you had to hit like command, option, shift, whatever, it's like that's a lot of keys. And especially if you have dexterity issues or something, that got a little bit unruly and not to mention just kind of obnoxious. Even I kind of make fun of like some of the advanced JAWS commands and stuff where it's like, okay, you got to hit like 4 keys with your hands and then like, I don't know, tap another key with your nose or something just to hit it. You can now use the caps lock as a modifier key. Huzzah! They caught on and copied JAWS and NVDA and System Access and all the kind of Windowsy stuff. So not a huge, not like a game changer as far as like a new feature, but for a lot of people, a nice new convenient thing.
Always.
Much appreciated. Whoa, what are you cut off there?
Always
What?
notifications off. Double tap to modifier keys. Control plus up. Always.
I'm getting a little bit of lag with my voiceover. It cuts out from time to time, and I'm not sure why. Uh-oh. Come on. I just lost speech. And I don't know if that's just because I'm doing it through AirPlay or...
Audio destination.
I can always... Okay, see now... Let's try it again here.
Characters.
And like I said, I'm going to leave these kind of little problems in because these are the kind of problems that you may or may not face. Like I said, I'm doing a little bit extra because I'm actually doing the mirroring and AirPlay and things like that with Reflector, but it is things that can potentially happen, especially if you do want to record content.
Double tap timeout. 0.25 button.
So there's your double tap timeout. You can also change, I think that might be new as well, where, you know, I said if you have a motor or dexterity issue, you know, you can kind of set the delay for your double tap to take effect. And there you go. Let's go back to accessibility.
Settings. Airplane mode off.
And
Double
there's a
tap to
couple of
toggle
other
setting.
things. There's some enhanced stuff with hearing aids. I can't speak to some of this other stuff. I can just tell you sort of what I've heard on a couple of really nice accessibility articles. There's also been some switch enhancement. So if you are a person who uses iOS with a switch, you know, like just a switch access, they've added a lot of flexibility to that, I guess, where you can kind of do more. Like you can, I don't know if it's like you can almost like do macros or something with it, where one of the people that I follow on Twitter, I met at CSUN, and I went to his session on accessibility in gaming. So he was really interesting, Ian Hamilton, and he had some really interesting articles, one of which was about how if you have a game that's pretty simple, like something where it's like a one tap or a tap and hold, you're not doing a whole bunch of crazy gestures, they've actually, with this new Switch control options, you can make a lot of these more accessible to Switch users now. So like they were talking about, like if you had something like Fruit Ninja or Jetpack Joyride. Like Jetpack Joyride would be a really nice simple one because all you have to do, it doesn't matter where you touch the screen when you're playing. When you let go, Barry goes to the bottom of the screen. When you hold the tap and hold, he will go up. So it's kind of just a binary up and down, and then maybe somewhere where you have to hit a power up button. But other than that, like it's something that you could you could make some of these more straightforward games accessible to Switch users, which is fantastic because, you know, hey, if you can get, you know, everyone to be able to have a little bit more fun. I know everybody, especially in VR, focuses on vocational and job related stuff, but you know what? That's totally true. But you know, there is really something to be said for enhancing the accessibility for just people to have free time to do recreational activities, whether it be reading or gaming or biking or, you know, whatever it happens to be. But it's just, you know, because that adds so much to quality of life too. So I know that they've added some accessibility to that kind of stuff as well. I don't have it on my iPad.
Home. Settings.
Shall we tempt fate and see if I can also mirror my iPhone? I can show you where now I might have this really fast. I may have to slow the speech down too. Oh no, I do. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can mirror this. And if I can't, I'll just kind of explain it to you. Let's do Highlander. Come on. Haha, let there be phone. Alright, so now I have both of these devices up here, and I'm going to also... Boom.
External audio route. Headings. Volume. Speech rate. Words. Characters.
Alright, So now we have I love this feature so much. Now I can actually have audio go through where it's supposed to be. So like I had mentioned in the RSS reader video, iOS 9 and it originally really confused me how it worked. I couldn't really figure it out during the beta, but then once iOS 9 came out for real, I actually sort of figured it out. So they do support ad blocking to some extent now, but what's interesting is the way it works is Apple seems to support ad blocking through some of their APIs with Safari. So like other developers can plug into it, and if they're using Safari extensions, they can make their own ad blockers. So it's kind of a weird way to do it, but like Apple's kind of like, basically the way I understand it is Apple's saying, yeah, we'll support ad blocking, but we're not going to be the ones to do it. Like, we will let you, but we're not going to, we're not going to get all the news sites and all these websites mad at us. We're just saying that, hey, it's possible. And if you run an ad blocker, you can go yell at them. So it's kind of giving the user the control, but it's also kind of like, it's kind of funny because it's also like, we'll make it really, we'll make users a lot happier, but for the people that don't want the ads being blocked, because it hurts their revenue, don't get mad at Apple because the users are downloading certain apps and there's apps in the App Store. So anyway, the way it works is you actually have to
Food folder, page 1 of 3.
If I go
App
to my
Store.
home screen here,
Ad blockers folder, 2 apps.
I have an ad blockers
Opening
folder.
ad blockers folder, ad blockers.
You
heading.
actually have to go to the App Store, and there are ad blockers available. The two that I have now, one of them, there was a whole spiel last week.
Crystal. Double tap to
Crystal
open.
is still available. Crystal is still there. Crystal.
Peace. Double tap to
Peace
open.
is no longer available in the App Store. This is the guy that made Overcast, who made Instapaper, really good apps, and I wanted to support him because I found out he was the one that made it. Well, he kind of had this thing recently where he's like he didn't want to keep it in the App Store because it was kind of he just thought it was blocking too much content, and he didn't really want to, kill everyone's. He has a whole blog post about it. It's just kind of look up. It's been in the news fairly recently, so it's kind of. He makes some really interesting points. I do find it a bummer that his app is no longer available and it's not going to be updated or supported anymore because he generally makes really nice apps. So what you have to do is you first have to go buy or download one of these ad blockers.
Dock settings.
Then you go into
Double tap to-
settings.
Settings.
Okay. And then on the main
button.
screen, you scroll
Rose 10 to
down
23 of
to
172.
where you have like general and all that kind of stuff.
Battery button, privacy button, iCloud
Let's
button,
keep
app and
going.
iTunes Store, wallet and Apple Pay, mail, contact notes, phone button, messages button.
So you keep going down.
Rose 22 to 30, Safari button.
Safari. So I'm going to double tap
Setting.
Safari. And you have all your whole bunch of settings here.
Autofill button.
I'm going to go down
Rose
a
10
bit
to
here.
19 of 19. Block pop-ups on.
So there's
Show tab bar on.
you have this show tab bar. You have
Block pop-ups on.
block pop-ups.
Double tap
This
to
was in
toggle setting.
iOS 8. But then below this,
Content blockers 1 button.
content blockers. Now, if you don't, what confused the heck out of me at first was that if you don't have one of those apps installed that iOS will recognize as a pop-up blocker, this item won't even appear in your menu. So for the longest time when I was doing the beta for iOS, I was like, where the heck is the, like, everyone's talking about this pop-up or this ad blocker. I want to use this. But I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on, and it just wasn't explained very well. So if I go into that,
Safari, back button. Crystal, on. Double
so
tap
I
to
have
toggle
Crystal
setting.
turned on right now,
Peace, off.
and
Double
I
tap to
have
toggle
Peace
setting.
turned off for now, because I was playing with Crystal a little bit more just to test some things.
Content blockers affect what content is loaded while using Safari. They cannot send any information about what was blocked back to the app.
So there's your little blurb about content blockers. So any app that you have, if you have one or more, you can turn on and off multiple apps, or support for any one of these ad blockers. But you do have to have one of them installed for that feature to actually even show up. I kind of wish that it would say it would have the content blockers, but then if you went in there, it would just say, no content blockers available. Please go to the App Store and choose, pick one, go download one. Because for a lot of people, like I said, unless you know that it's there, it just would be really nice to have. And that being said, like I said, when I was talking about like the weather websites and some of these things that I've been using in my RSS reader apps, even the mobile web has gotten just so cluttered, and some of these invasive ads that I really don't like it. And I mean, it not only does it slow things down, but it actually really affects how VoiceOver responds. And so when you're running, any website is going to be slowed down a little bit because the page has to render, and then VoiceOver or whatever screen reader you're using also has to interpret how that's, what it's going to do. So then you add that onto some of these weird multimedia ads or some of these other content things where VoiceOver or a screen reader just kind of wigs out on them, and it gets to just be really kind of a pain. So like I said, prior to iOS 9, I really started getting into the whole RSS reader thing. And then once I figured out how in the heck this iOS 9 ad blocking worked,
App Store.
I'm like, yeah, let's
Double
do
tap to
this.
open.
And so I did start doing that, and I really do like it a lot. I understand the opposite, the opposite side of like, well, hey, we make a lot of our money on ad revenue, which, okay, fair enough. But you have, like, again, yes, it's about the bottom line for a lot of these places, and it's really hard to make money, especially in the ad revenue area. But the problem is like, you're doing some of that at the expense of your end user, at the expense of your customers. You're making the person's web browsing experience so awful because pages take longer, there's distractions, there's things like floating above the thing. Sometimes you load a page and all of a sudden it starts blurring audio or video. That crap has got to stop. And it's no wonder that people are turning more and more to ad blockers. I talked about just recently, I think, how on the, for the longest time I didn't used to use ad blockers for the computer. But a while back I've started doing it for that too, because it's just gotten so ridiculous and I can't stand it anymore. So I do get the website side, but I mean, if anything, you can set whitelist for sites and pages that, in a lot of these apps, so you can let ads through for certain sites if you like them. Or I've heard a few places where some of how the ad blocker blocks things, like it actually blocks some components of the website so that the web page doesn't load correctly. So there is that, but you can turn the thing off. Now, what I've also heard is that if you go to Safari,
Safari, double tap to open,
and if you, what you do is
Safari,
you find the reload button, and if you double tap and hold, you don't just double tap it to reload the page, but if you double tap and hold, it's kind of, I guess there's like a quick hidden shortcut to reload the page untouched, so like without any ad blocker enabled. So that's sort of a cool way to kind of get around that, of like if you notice the page is not loading correctly or as it used to, and it is actually blocking content that you really do need, there does seem to be kind of a quicker way or a more convenient way to block that ad or to load that page without going into settings and going in and disabling the ad blocker and then doing the website and then coming back and re-enabling the blocker. So that seems to be kind of a neat touch. I think I found that out on a Twitter post last week sometime. So I'm still learning. I'm still trying to see how effective this is. But if I go to like pages
button, pages, done button, Roseville, Minnesota, 55,000.
Let's say I just go to
Afro Samurai 2, Weather Underground, visit, link, image.
So this page, it used to be really good, and this is a mobile page.
1025.
And it's probably going to be fine now. We get our
Page 3
radar.
of 7. Page 4 of 7.
And this is perfect. This is the way it should be. I have my current
Page
conditions.
3 of 7.
I
Page
have
2
my
of 7.
radar. I
Page
have
3 of 7.
my forecast.
Page 4
Boom.
of 7.
Let's see if I can
page
get
1 of
this
7.
to work, actually.
Address, i.1d.com, reload, button.
Let me do a double.
Current, in-page link. Request desktop site, button. Reload without content blockers, button.
So, boom, there's your option, reload without content
Reload.
blockers. Now let me show you what this looks like.
Weather
without
Underground,
it.
reload, button. WSW. Page 2 of 7. Page 3 of 7.
Well,
Page 2
let's
of 7.
see.
Page
I'm
3 of
just
7.
visually looking at this. Sorry
Page
for...
4 of 7. Page 5 of 7.
See, now it's
Page 6
behaving.
of 7.
Well, no, there's still
Page
some
5 of 7.
stuff that seems
Page
to
4
be,
of
it's not
7.
loading in correctly.
Page 3 of 7.
But there is... The ad didn't seem to load correctly. But sometimes there would be like one or two ads here. There would be one kind of
Page 2
up
of
in
7.
here. And what happens is there would actually be sometimes where like a voiceover would just, if you accidentally touch that area or if you scroll to the part of the page where that was loading, voiceover would just freak out a little bit and it would be really hard to kind of get it to respond again. You'd have to kind of wait quite a while for it to kind of think about it, and then you'd have to touch elsewhere on the page for it to work. So that's just kind of a little sneak peek at ad blocker
Safari.
support
Double tap to open.
in iOS 9. So there is definitely more to iOS 9. Those are the main features that I can think of. I wanted to cover a little bit of accessibility. I wanted to cover a little bit of like the news and the app switcher, the Siri, or the kind of proactive. It's still not gonna give Google Now a run for its money, but yeah, you know, they're getting there eventually, I guess. So there is that. Overall, I mean, if you're used to iOS 8, it's not going to feel a whole lot different. There are, especially for accessibility, go to appleviz.com and look at some of their posts about iOS 9. There are some accessibility issues or bugs that people have found. One that I've found is that sometimes when oh, hi, yeah, somebody's calling me. I will, I will call you back in just a minute. I'm finishing a video. Go away. No, I said go away. That was the problem about sharing my phone. No.
App Store.
All right.
Double tap to
anyway.
open.
Like I said, there are some accessibility issues, one of which if you answer the phone with VoiceOver, sometimes it becomes really unresponsive and it kind of locks up your phone. I haven't had that happen, but I have had it happen once once or twice where I've picked up the phone and I like to sometimes pull it away from my ear and then kind of do it on speakerphone where it just automatically recognizes it. Sometimes it doesn't go, like when you go to speaker, it sometimes doesn't go back to regular phone mode when you put it back up to your ear again. So there's a little bit of glitchiness with that. Sometimes on my iPad and my iPhone 6 Plus, I find that it doesn't actually always, when I rotate the screen, it does like a little, you see around the edge of the screen, it kind of does this little switchy thing, but the actual interface doesn't rotate. So it's a little finicky there. I don't know what's going on with that. It happens more often on the iPad, but I have had it happen on both the iPhone 6 Plus where it also does support rotation. I've seen that happen. There are a couple of issues, at least with the headset that I use, where there are times, you know, where I'll use VoiceOver and I don't use VoiceOver. So what'll happen is I'll be using VoiceOver, I'll turn it off and do something without VoiceOver. When I turn VoiceOver on again, it kicks the audio away from my headset and brings it back to the phone, and I end up having to hit the play pause button on my headset to call, or to actually, like, you know, call back to bring back my audio to back to my headset. So there's kind of a little screwiness there. If you are a Braille user, you may want to be, especially if you are a deaf-blind user or a really heavy Braille user, you definitely want to check out AppleVis and look at what they're writing about there. I'm not a huge Braille user. I haven't really had a chance to play with Braille on iOS 9 much yet. But basically, there are some issues with it not reconnecting, to a Braille display.
Double tap to open.
So like it'll connect fine, but then if you lock it, or let's say you put it into flight mode, there's a bug where if you put it into flight mode and then pull it out of flight mode, usually, you know, the Braille display would just go, oh, okay, you're not in flight mode anymore. Boom, we'll reconnect. They're having some trouble with that. So if you're just, you know, if you're just a blind user who can still use VoiceOver, it's really obnoxious, but it's, you know, you can get around it. If you're deafblind, though, and you really require that Braille display to interact with your device, like because you can't hear what VoiceOver says, losing your Braille display can be a really big deal. So that's something that I'm hoping in iOS 9.1 they really do they do address some of these VoiceOver issues and some of these accessibility issues. All that said, I haven't really had in the beta there, of course, because it was a beta, and apps weren't releasing updates until the official release of iOS 9, really. But you know, there were quite a few crashes here and there. But since running the full build of iOS 9, it's been pretty stable. The performance has been pretty good. I don't have any problems there. I haven't noticed any drastic dip in battery life or anything like that. And matter of fact, it seems to be still pretty solid. Yeah, I mean, just if you're familiar with iOS 8, there's a lot of it's just a lot of cleanup this time. There's not a whole lot of whiz-bang features unless you get the 3D touch of their iPhone 6S or 6S Plus. But if you're using an existing device, you know, if you have a new enough iPad, you can do your multitasking. I should also mention with VoiceOver, you can also now use the Siri voices as a VoiceOver voice if you wish. I'm going to stick to Alex 2 for now, just because I've kind of gotten used to him and I quite like him, so that works. But it's there if you want it. Like I said, it's just a lot of behind the scenes, under the hood kind of cleanup things, making things run a little more optimized. You know, you got a couple little enhancements here and there. The ad blocker thing is a really nice feature. Yeah. I know I've probably missed a few things, but those are the things that stand out to me as using the device on a daily basis. I mean, I use my phone all the time, especially on my phone. iPad, not quite as often, but I use it also on a very regular basis. All of the apps seem to behave pretty well. I can still use like KNFB Reader. I can still use my Over 40 Plus app. Those work really well. Over 40 did fix their little focus issue if you have used Over 40 a little bit, and you notice that it would kind of go in and out of focus on a fairly regular basis. They have fixed that, and it's a lot cleaner again, so that's fantastic. Yeah, those are just some of my thoughts, and hopefully I won't, after stopping the video, hopefully I won't go, oh man, I totally forgot to talk about this, and this. But I think I've covered the majority of key things that I think are worth talking about. Showed you a little bit of both on the iPad and on my iPhone. What happens here? Let's tempt fate one more time before I wrap up here.
Portrait.
Okay. Portrait. It actually did respond. As I said, sometimes that can be an issue.
Landscape.
Sometimes
to the left.
Oh, okay, and it actually did it at a different size. That's weird, but sure, why not? Okay. So yeah, that is a look at iOS 9, both kind of some mainstream features, but a little more concentrating on accessibility. You can follow me on Twitter at BGFH79 for all kinds of stuff there. I've been posting a lot more there recently. A lot of retweets, but more and more of my own kind of musings and stuff there as well. And yeah, follow me, like the video, and subscribe. Tell any others that you might find, who might find this channel interesting. Hope you guys found this helpful. And until next time, I will talk to you guys again later.